He's worth billions. She makes minimum wage. He broke a sacred promise. Now, she's here to break his empire. What happens when the man who destroyed your past becomes your boss, and he doesn't even recognize the face of the woman whose life he ruined? This isn't a story about forgiveness. It's about revenge served cold, one dish at a time, in the hallways of his own mansion. Have you ever felt the sting of a betrayal so deep it changed who you are? That feeling of powerlessness watching someone build a paradise on the ruins of your dreams? That's exactly where our story begins. Meet Glenn Cunningham, the billionaire who forgot where he came from, and Christina Meyer, the maid he never should have forgotten. This is the ultimate rich man poor woman saga. The promise of this video is simple: we're diving into a web of secrets, a meticulous revenge plot, and a love story so powerful it survived the bitterest of hatred. We are about to witness an emotional journey of power, pain, and the shocking plot twist of destiny that will change everything. The stakes couldn't be higher. For him, it's just another day in his glass empire. For her, every moment is a step closer to her redemption or her complete destruction. The question isn't if he'll find out the truth, but what will be left when her secret identity comes to light and his house of cards comes crashing down after that broken promise. If you're ready for a story that will test the limits of love and revenge, comment the word destiny below. Like this video as a vote of confidence in her journey, share it with a friend who loves a breathtaking drama, and most importantly, subscribe and hit the bell, because the story of Glenn and Christina is just getting started. It's going to be life-changing. Well, talk about a rough first day at the job. For Christina Meyer, poverty wasn't just a word, it was a cold, hard reality that had forced her into this demeaning uniform, a maid in a mansion that seemed to mock her very existence. She took a deep breath, clutching her cleaning supplies like a shield, and walked through the ornate doors of her new workplace. It was a step into the lion's den, a necessary evil to survive. But nothing, absolutely nothing, could have prepared her for the ghost standing in the grand foyer. Her heart didn't just sink, it plummeted, freezing mid-beat. There he was. Glenn Cunningham. Not the boy she remembered, but a man carved from ice and arrogance, the ruthless billionaire whose face was plastered across business magazines. The same man who had whispered promises under a blanket of stars, the architect of a future they were supposed to build together. That beautiful broken promise was the foundation upon which he had built this cold, glittering empire, and seeing him again felt like a physical blow. Oh, the bitter irony of it all. Here she was, on her knees scrubbing floors in the palace of the king who had dethroned her. The whole situation was a twisted parody of a rich man poor woman cliché, except this wasn't a fairy tale. This was a war. In that single, heart-stopping moment, a new purpose ignited within her, burning away the despair. If destiny had brought her here, it wasn't to serve him. It was to orchestrate his downfall. Her secret identity would be her greatest weapon. A silent vow was made, a new promise to replace the old one he had shattered. The humiliation she felt began to crystallize into a diamond-hard resolve. This wasn't just about survival anymore, this was about justice. The perfect revenge plot began to take shape in the corridors of her mind, a blueprint for ruin hidden behind the quiet, deferential mask of a servant. He would pay for what he did, for the love he discarded so casually. This was the start of a deeply personal drama. He hadn't seen her yet. He was on the phone, barking orders, his voice dripping with the kind of authority that could move markets and crush competitors. He was a titan, a king in his castle, completely oblivious to the fact that his greatest threat was standing just a few feet away, holding a dustpan. The ultimate surprise was yet to come, and she would be the one to deliver it. The stage was set for an epic romance turned tragedy. This job was no longer a burden, it was an opportunity. A front row seat to his life, a backstage pass to his secrets and vulnerabilities. Every polished surface, every laundered sheet, would be a step closer to her goal. She would learn his weaknesses, find the cracks in his fortress, and strike when he least expected it. Her quest for revenge had officially begun, a slow-burning fire that would eventually consume everything he held dear. So, she lowered her eyes, perfected her posture of subservience, and melted into the background, becoming just another part of the scenery. But beneath the surface, a storm was brewing. This wasn't just a job, it was a mission. A life-changing mission to remind Glenn Cunningham that some promises are etched in the soul, and breaking them comes with a price far greater than any fortune could ever cover. The ultimate payback was in motion. Let's rewind the clock for a moment, shall we? Picture a scene far from this cold opulence, under a sky bursting with stars and youthful dreams. A much younger Glenn and Christina, their fingers intertwined, their faces illuminated by nothing but hope and the soft glow of a summer moon. They weren't a billionaire and a maid, they were just two kids with nothing but each other, and that felt like everything. Their love story was pure and simple, untouched by the cynicism of the world. "Well, build a better world, Christina," he had whispered, his voice filled with a conviction that felt unshakable. "Together. I promise." That broken promise now echoed in the vast, empty halls of his mansion, a ghostly reminder of a future that had been stolen. In this painful flashback, their shared dream felt so real, so tangible you could almost touch it. They were a team, poised to take on the world, believing their true love was the only armor they'd ever need. The contrast is, frankly, brutal. From a shared picnic blanket on a grassy hill to a present day where Glenn dines on fine china, surrounded by sycophants, and Christina struggles to afford her next meal. The warmth of their past stands in stark, painful opposition to the cold, sterile luxury of his current life and her desperate fight for survival. It's the quintessential rich man poor woman narrative, but with a history that makes it all the more tragic and ripe for drama. Back then, his ambition wasn't about power or greed, it was about creating a legacy they could be proud of, a community project that would lift others up. He was driven by a desire for a different kind of wealth. What a shocking turn of events that this same man would one day measure his worth in stock prices and corporate takeovers, completely forgetting the woman who was supposed to be his partner in that noble dream. The path to his redemption would be a long one. Their youthful vows were not just words, they were the bedrock of their shared identity. They found solace and strength in each other, a refuge from the harsh realities of their humble beginnings.
This memory serves as a painful testament to how far he has fallen, not just in our eyes, but from the person he once vowed to be. The seeds of this future revenge plot were sown in the soil of this deep, unforgettable betrayal. This flashback isn't just a memory, it's the why. It's the fuel for Christina's fire, the reason her mission is not just about revenge, but about reclaiming a piece of the justice the world denied her. It's an emotional anchor that grounds her actions, reminding her and Yusuf of the profound depth of what was lost. The love was real, which makes the betrayal all the more devastating and her quest for payback so compelling. And so, as we return to the present, the image of those two hopeful teenagers lingers. It hangs in the air, a silent accusation against the cold, ruthless man Glenn Cunningham has become. The stark juxtaposition of past and present sets the stage for a collision of two worlds, a plot twist of destiny that has been years in the making. The question is, can a love that was once so strong ever truly be extinguished? You'd think, wouldn't you, that a love like that would leave an indelible mark? A scar on the memory that could never truly fade. But as Glenn Cunningham swept past Christine in the hallway, his eyes, cold and dismissive, slid right over her as if she were a piece of furniture. There was not a flicker of recognition, not a hint of a memory. For the arrogant billionaire, she was just another faceless member of his staff, the new maid. It was a shocking and deeply painful confirmation. He was a man consumed by his empire, a machine of ambition and ruthless efficiency. His world was a whirlwind of high-stakes meetings, strategic acquisitions, and lavish parties. The boy who dreamed of community projects was buried deep beneath layers of custom-tailored suits and cynical negotiations. In his mind, people were assets or liabilities, and Christina, in her simple uniform, didn't even register on the balance sheet. This indifference was more cutting than any insult. Christina, for her part, absorbed the blow with a chilling stillness. Each time he looked through her, it was a fresh stab of pain, but it also hardened her resolve. His ignorance was a blessing in disguise, the perfect camouflage for her secret identity. She could move through his world unseen, unheard, gathering the intelligence she needed for her revenge plot. His arrogance would be his Achilles heel, and she would be the one to exploit it. He treated her with a cold, detached indifference that was almost inhuman. A dropped file, a quiet instruction about his preferences, a clipped thank you without ever making eye contact. To him, she was a function, not a person. This impersonal cruelty was the centerpiece of his new personality, a stark contrast to the boy who once held her hand and shared his deepest fears. The drama was escalating with every silent, painful encounter. What a strange and twisted dance of destiny. They shared the same space, breathed the same air, yet lived in entirely different universes. His was a world of power and privilege, hers one of quiet observation and simmering rage. This cruel dynamic of the rich man, poor woman trope was playing out in real time, under his own roof. He had no idea that the foundation of his perfect life was beginning to crack, all because of the woman he refused to see. This lack of recognition fueled a question in Christina's heart. Was any part of the boy she loved still in there? Or had the billionaire truly erased every trace of their shared history? This question wasn't just about her pain, it was about the very nature of his soul. Could someone so completely forget a love that was once their entire world? It was a puzzle she was determined to solve, even as she planned his ruin. And so, the days turned into a quiet routine of cleaning and plotting, of serving and observing. He remained blissfully unaware, wrapped in the cocoon of his wealth. But his failure to recognize her was the gravest mistake of his life. It gave her the time and the access she needed to set her plan in motion. A storm was coming for Cunningham, and it had a name: Christina Meyer. Her moment for revenge was drawing nearer. The scene is a lavish party, the kind where champagne flows like water and laughter sounds like breaking glass. Glenn's mansion is overflowing with the city's elite, a sea of fake smiles and expensive jewelry. And in the middle of it all is Christina, navigating the crowd with a tray of appetizers, trying to remain invisible. But visibility, it seems, was about to be thrust upon her in the most brutal way imaginable. This was a stage set for pure drama. Glenn's fiancée, a woman as beautiful as she was cruel, saw Christina in a malicious opportunity. With a practiced, saccharine smile, she accidentally spilled a glass of red wine down the front of her own pristine white dress, turning to her guests with theatrical gasp. "Oh, you clumsy girl," she exclaimed, her voice dripping with venomous sweetness. Making sure everyone was watching, Christina was instantly humiliated, the burning center of unwanted attention. Instead of crumbling or bursting into tears, something incredible happened. Christina Meyer stood perfectly still, her back ramrod straight. She met the fiancé's cruel gaze not with anger, but with a quiet, steely dignity that was utterly disarming. "My apologies, madam," she said, her voice even and calm. "Allow me to assist you." There was no fear, no shame, only an unnerving composure that silenced the whispers around them. It was a moment of unexpected power, and for the first time, Cunningham actually saw her. His conversation faltered as his eyes were drawn to the unfolding scene. He expected to see a flustered, weeping maid. Instead, he saw a woman of remarkable grace under fire. Something about her posture, the defiant calm in her eyes, stirred a long-dormant memory, a faint echo from a past he had consciously buried. It was a surprise that caught him completely off guard. This unexpected display of strength was a plot twist in his perception of the world. He was surrounded by people who cowered and flattered, who would do anything to stay in his good graces. Yet, here was a simple servant, publicly humiliated, who refused to be broken. The encounter piqued his interest, an anomaly in his perfectly curated life. Who was this woman who seemed so out of place, yet so completely in control of herself? The incident was a catalyst. While the fiancée celebrated her petty victory, she had inadvertently accomplished the exact opposite of her goal. She hadn't broken a maid, she had made her visible to the one person who mattered. That flash of recognition in Glenn's eyes, however fleeting, was a small victory for Christina. It was a sign that perhaps the boy he once was wasn't entirely gone. The love story, however dormant, wasn't completely dead. As Christina quietly cleaned up the mess, she could feel his eyes on her. It was a new kind of gaze, not dismissive, but curious, intrigued. She had weathered the storm and emerged stronger, a silent act of defiance that had unknowingly planted a seed of doubt in the billionaire's mind. The game had just changed, and a new, more emotional chapter in her quest for redemption and revenge was about to begin. Deep within the silent hours of the night, long after the parties and the power meetings had ended, Christina's real work began. Her secret identity as a corporate saboteur was far more fitting than her role as a maid, poring over documents she had discreetly photographed in Glenn's study. She finally found a vulnerability. It was a flaw in an upcoming acquisition, a detail so small yet so critical that, if exploited, could trigger a cascade of financial ruin for him. Her revenge plot finally had a tangible target. The plan was brilliant, almost poetic in its destructive potential. A few anonymous emails, a strategically leaked document, and Glenn Cunningham's carefully constructed empire would suffer a blow from which it might never recover. This was it, the moment she had been working towards, the perfect weapon to execute her revenge. The taste of victory was so close, a righteous fire burning in her chest. She held the power to make the great billionaire fall. But as she prepared to set the plan in motion, a new piece of information surfaced. She discovered that the collapse of this deal wouldn't just hurt Glenn. It would decimate the pension funds of hundreds of innocent employees at the target company. People just like her, struggling to build a future. Suddenly, the clean lines of her righteous anger became blurred. This wasn't justice, it was collateral damage. A deep-seated conflict, a true moral drama, erupted within her. Her innate kindness, a quality she thought had been burned away by years of hardship and betrayal, roared back to life. She looked at the faces in the company's online newsletter smiling. Hopeful people who had no idea their life savings were on the line. How could she destroy them to get to him? Was her redemption worth their ruin? This was a life-changing dilemma, a choice between her personal vendetta and her fundamental sense of decency. And so, in an act of quiet integrity that he would never know, she subtly sabotaged her own plan. With a few deft keystrokes, she altered a single piece of data in the information she leaked to a competitor change, so small it would be dismissed as a typo, but significant enough to make the competitor second-guess the intel's validity. She effectively saved his deal, protecting those innocent people from the fallout of her war. It was a silent act of grace. This was a major plot twist in her own narrative. She had the power to ruin him, to fulfill the promise she made to herself, but she chose not to. What does that say about a person? If you were in her shoes, with the perfect revenge in your grasp, would you take it? Be honest. This moment revealed that her soul hadn't been entirely consumed by hatred. The true love she once felt had left a legacy of empathy that even his betrayal couldn't extinguish. Christina had to accept the difficult truth her path was more complicated than simple revenge. This act of quiet sabotage wasn't defeat, it was a redefinition of her mission. She needed to find a way to make Glenn pay for his broken promise without destroying innocent lives in the process. Her quest had become more nuanced, more challenging, and infinitely more emotional. She was fighting not just for justice, but for her own soul. Ever since the party, something had shifted in Glenn Cunningham. The image of the maid with the unbreakable spirit had lodged itself in his mind, a persistent, nagging anomaly. He found himself watching her, not with a detached gaze of a boss, but with a growing, inexplicable intrigue. He started to notice things he had previously overlooked, peeling back the layers of her quiet and efficient facade. His world of black and white was suddenly developing a very interesting shade of gray. He saw her quiet intelligence in the way she organized his chaotic study, creating a system of order he hadn't even known he needed. He noticed her unwavering honesty when she found a valuable cufflink he thought had lost and returned it without a moment's hesitation. These small acts stood in stark, glaring contrast to the sycophants and yes-men who surrounded him daily, the people who would lie and cheat for a fraction of his favor. She was different. This growing fascination was a surprise even to himself. Why was he so captivated by a member of his staff? He was a billionaire, engaged to a society beauty, at the top of his game. Yet, he found his thoughts drifting to the servant who moved through his home with such quiet dignity. There was a familiarity to her, a ghost of a feeling he couldn't quite place, but it was compelling, drawing him like a moth to a flame he didn't understand. The drama was all internal now, a silent battle in his mind. He would catch himself observing her interactions with other staff, noting her kindness and the genuine respect they had for her. She was a leader in her own small world, a queen in a kingdom of service. This was so far removed from the cold, transactional relationships that defined his life. This quiet romance of observation was becoming a dangerous obsession. This was no longer just a rich man, poor woman dynamic. It was becoming something far more complex. He was the one who felt poor, in a way poor in authenticity, in genuine connection. Christina Meyer, the woman he didn't even recognize, was unknowingly holding up a mirror to his own empty existence, and he was beginning to dislike the reflection staring back at him. This slow-burning realization was a life-changing shift in his perspective. His observations were a subconscious search for something he had lost long ago. He didn't know he was looking for a piece of himself, for the boy who believed in things like honor and true love. He just knew that this woman, with her quiet strength and mysterious past, felt more real than anyone else in his gilded cage. Her secret identity was safe, but her true character was beginning to shine through, captivating the last person on earth she ever wanted to attract. And so, the hunter in his revenge plot was unknowingly becoming the object of her target's fascination. It was a delicious, dangerous irony. As he watched her, trying to solve the puzzle she presented, he was slowly lowering his defenses, becoming more vulnerable than he had been in years. The stage was being set for a confrontation, a collision of past and present that was now, thanks to his own growing curiosity, utterly inevitable. It was late, the kind of quiet that only settles in a house after the master has retired for the night. Or so she thought. Christina was in Glenn's private study, a room that was the very heart of his empire, performing her final duties. It was here, while dusting a bookshelf filled with leather-bound first editions, that her fingers brushed against a loose panel. Curiosity, a dangerous but irresistible impulse, took over. What she found inside made her breath catch in her throat. There, hidden away from the world, was a worn-out, faded photograph. It was a picture of the two of them as teenagers, grinning at the camera, their arms wrapped around each other, radiating a kind of pure, unadulterated joy that seemed to belong to another lifetime. He hadn't completely forgotten. He couldn't have. This small, forgotten token was proof, a tangible piece of their shared love story that survived the years of bitterness and silence. It was a shocking discovery. Tears welled in her eyes as she held the fragile memory in her hands. For a single unguarded moment, the maid disappeared, and she was just Christina again, the girl who had loved Glenn Cunningham with all her heart. All the anger, the pain, the carefully constructed walls of her revenge plot crumbled around her. This single photograph was a powerful testament to the true love they once shared, a relic from a time before the broken promise. It was an intensely emotional moment. "What do you think you're doing?" The voice was cold, sharp, and cut through the silence like a shard of glass. She froze, her heart hammering against her ribs. Glenn was standing in the doorway, his face a mask of thunderous rage. He wasn't supposed to be here. The confrontation she had been carefully planning was suddenly happening, but on his terms, with her caught red-handed, holding the evidence of their past. The ultimate, heart-stopping surprise. The air grew thick with tension, a silent, crackling energy filling the space between them. His eyes weren't looking at her. They were locked on the photograph in her hand. The color drained from his face as a storm of emotion, confusion, anger, and something else she couldn't quite read flashed across his features. The billionaire was, for the first time, completely thrown off balance. His carefully controlled world had just been breached. This was the ultimate plot twist. Her secret identity was still safe, but her secret connection to him was now exposed in the most dramatic way possible. He strode toward her, his presence overwhelming in confined space. The distance between the rich man and poor woman had vanished, replaced by a dangerous, electrifying proximity. This was the moment of truth, a precipice from which there was no turning back. She held his gaze, the photograph still clutched in her hand like a talisman. The air was electric with unspoken words, with years of pain and betrayal hanging between them. What would he do? What would she say? The confrontation was here, raw and unplanned, a tense, heart-stopping moment that would irrevocably alter the course of their intertwined destiny. The next move will be life-changing. The discovery of the photograph had lit a dangerous fire. Glenn's fiancée, already insecure and deeply jealous of the attention he was paying to MAID, saw the tense encounter as a declaration of war. She couldn't compete with a ghost from his past, especially one who was now a living, breathing presence in their home. And so, she concocted a plan as cruel as it was simple, a scheme designed to eliminate Christina Meyer from their lives for good. This drama was about to get ugly. With meticulous, venomous precision, she took her own grandmother's diamond Acacia, priceless heirloom man, hid it deep within Christina's modest belongings in the staff quarters. It was a classic, brutal frame-up. She then feigned a hysterical panic, raising the alarm throughout the mansion, claiming the necklace had been stolen. Of course, she made sure to plant the seed of suspicion immediately the new maid. She was the only one in my room today. The accusation hung in the air, thick and poisonous. Glenn was thrust into a terrible position. His mind, the logical, calculating brain of a billionaire, told him the evidence was straightforward. She was a woman from a poor background, with mysterious fixation on his past, found snooping in his private study. The narrative wrote itself. Firing her was the only rational, sensible thing to do to protect his home and his fiancée. But his heart was screaming a different story. A powerful, unexplainable doubt took root in his soul, a gut feeling that this was all wrong. He kept replaying the image of Christina at the party, her quiet dignity in the face of humiliation. He remembered her unwavering honesty with the cufflink. Stealing a necklace? It didn't fit the woman he had been observing. It felt like a contradiction, a jarringly false note in the song he was just beginning to understand. This internal conflict was tearing him apart. On one side was his fiancée, the woman he was supposed to marry, demanding action and loyalty. On the other was a gut-level, instinctual feeling that Christina was innocent, a feeling connected to that long-dormant memory the photograph had reawakened. It was a battle between his present life and a past that refused to stay buried, a classic conflict of head versus heart. The emotional toll was immense. The fiancée pressed her advantage, feigning tears and betrayal. How could you even hesitate, Glenn? She's a thief. His trust in his own judgment was being tested in a way it never had been before. This wasn't a business deal with clear profit and loss margins. This was a matter of character, of intuition. Firing Christina felt like a betrayal of the truth he couldn't yet articulate, a surrender to a narrative that felt scripted and false. And so, he stood at a crossroads, the weight of the decision pressing down on him. His mind screamed fire her, but his heart whispered, wait. This powerful, unexplainable doubt was a testament to the impact Christina had already made on him. It was a sign that the connection they once shared wasn't just a memory in a photograph. It was a living, breathing force, a thread of true love that refused to be severed by lies or time. The plot twist was that he was starting to feel again. The evidence was found, of course, planted neatly by the fiancée and discovered by a security guard she had tipped off. The diamond necklace lay there, sparkling innocently in Christina's meager belongings, a glittering symbol of her supposed crime. For Glenn, seeing it was like a punch to the gut. The doubt he had felt evaporated, replaced by a tidal wave of rage and a feeling he hadn't experienced in years, a profound sense of personal betrayal. In that moment, everything clicked into place in the worst possible way. The snooping in his study, the photograph, her strange, intense conceit wasn't about a lost love story. It was a con. He saw a narrative of a scorned ex-lover, a woman from a desperate background, using their shared past as leverage. He believed her entire presence in his house was a premeditated sham, a sophisticated revenge plot designed to blackmail him over a youthful indiscretion. His heart, which had just started to soften, hardened into something colder and more brutal than ever before. He summoned Christina to his study, the same room where she found the photograph. But this time, there was no tension, no curiosity, only a glacial fury in his eyes. He didn't see a woman he once loved. He saw a con artist, a common criminal who had preyed on a past he was just beginning to reconsider. The rich man, poor woman gap had become an unbridgeable chasm. "Get out," he said, his voice lethally quiet. He threw a checkbook on the desk. "Take whatever you think I owe you for your little performance and get out of my house." He cruelly fired her, not with the detached professionalism of a boss, but with the white-hot rage of a man who felt he'd been made a fool of. He didn't give her a chance to speak, to defend herself, to explain the shocking misunderstanding. He just wanted her gone. For Christina, the blow was catastrophic. The accusation of theft was painful, but it was his belief in her guilt that truly shattered her. To see the utter contempt in his eyes, to be accused of being a blackmailer after he was the one who had committed the ultimate betrayal with his broken promise seat, was a level of injustice that broke her spirit. Her grand plan for revenge, her hope for some kind of redemption, all of it dissolved into a puddle of despair. She was completely and utterly shattered. She didn't even look at the checkbook. She just turned and walked away, every ounce of her steely dignity gone, replaced by a hollow, vacant numbness. She had been humiliated at the party, but this was different. This was a complete annihilation of her spirit, delivered by the one person whose opinion she was horrified to realize still mattered to her. This was the ultimate emotional defeat. This is the moment of false defeat, the point where all hope seems lost. In a single word, what word describes Glenn's action in this moment? Commented below. He was acting on what he believed to be the truth, a truth carefully fabricated by his fiancée. In his fit of rage and betrayal, he hadn't just fired his maid, he had pushed away the only person who represented a chance at true love and a connection to his own lost soul. And he had no idea of the terrible mistake he had just made. The world had gone gray for Christina Meyer. With her meticulously crafted plan for justice now a pile of smoldering ash, and her heart broken for a second and perhaps final time, there was nothing left for her here. Every corner of the city held a memory, a ghost of a broken promise that was too painful to bear. Defeated, she packed her few belongings into a single worn-out suitcase. Leaving town forever felt less like a choice and more like surrender. Her grand revenge plot had backfired in the most spectacular way. She had wanted to expose his weakness, to make him feel a fraction of the pain she had endured. Instead, she was the one left exposed, branded a thief, and cast out with finality that echoed their first devastating breakup. The bitter irony was that Glenn's fiancée had achieved with a single lie what Christina couldn't with months of careful planning. It was a shocking and decisive victory for her rival. All seemed lost. There was no path forward, no hope for redemption, no chance to clear her name. She was just a disgrace maid, a footnote in the grand life of a billionaire. As she bought a one-way bus ticket to a place where no one knew her name, a profound sense of hopelessness washed over her. Destiny, it seemed, was a cruel and unforgiving force, and hers was to always be on the losing end of this tragic love story. Meanwhile, back at the mansion, Glenn's fiancée was celebrating her triumph. She reveled in her victory, preening and basking in the restored order of her world. With Christina gone, the ghosts of the past had been exorcised, and her future as Mrs. Glenn Cunningham was secure. She had played the game of deception masterfully, manipulating the powerful man at her side and eliminating the only threat to her carefully constructed life of luxury and status. This is the lowest point of the drama, the valley of despair where protagonist is utterly defeated. Christina wasn't just leaving town, she was leaving behind the last vestiges of the hopeful girl she once was. The fight had gone out of her. The weight of being so completely misunderstood by the one person she had hoped would, on some level, finally see the truth was a burden too heavy to carry any longer. The departure was quiet, anonymous. No one would notice she was gone. She was just another casualty in the orbit of a powerful man, a story that would never be told. The engine of the bus rumbled, a mournful sound signaling the end of a chapter, the end of a dream, the end of hope. The emotional weight of this departure was immense, a quiet, heartbreaking exit from a battle she had already lost. As the bus prepared to pull away from the station, Christina stared out the window at the city lights, each one a reminder of what she had lost. The victory of her enemy felt absolute. It was a perfect ending for the cruel fiancé and the arrogant billionaire, and the most tragic of endings for the girl with a broken promise and a shattered heart. It truly seemed that all was lost, with no plot twist in sight. Back in his sterile, silent mansion, an unsettling feeling began to gnaw at Glenn. The victory should have felt clean, decisive. Instead, it left a bitter aftertaste. He was haunted by the look in Christina's eyes as she walked away not of guilt, but profound, hollowed-out devastation. It was a look that didn't align with the narrative of a caught con artist. That persistent, nagging doubt, which his rage had momentarily silenced, returned with a vengeance. Driven by an impulse he couldn't explain, he began to dig. He didn't hire a private investigator. This was too personal. He started with the past, with the lie he was told all those years ago, the lie that served as a catalyst for him breaking their sacred promise in the first place. He revisited old emails, made a few quiet calls to people from his old neighborhood, people he hadn't spoken to in over a decade. He was pulling at a thread, and the entire tapestry of his life was beginning to unravel. And then he found it, the truth. It came in the form of an old, guilt-ridden friend who finally confessed. Christina had never betrayed him. She had been the victim of a cruel lie, a lie spun by the very same people who were jealous of their bond, who told him she had left him for someone with money. It was a lie he'd been all too ready to believe, a lie that had sent him down this path of cynical ambition, determined to become the very thing they accused her of wanting, a rich man. The realization hit him like a physical force, knocking the air from his lungs. His entire billionaire life, his entire empire, his cynical worldview was all built on a misunderstanding, a lie. The broken promise wasn't his fault alone. It was a result of a deception that had poisoned everything. He had become a monster to protect himself from a wound that was never even real. The shocking truth was a devastating blow. This was a life-changing moment of clarity. He saw with horrifying precision how he had become the villain in his own story. He had pushed away the one person who represented true love and authenticity, all because of a falsehood he had chosen to accept. The drama of his past was not what he thought it was, and the weight of his real transgression, his lack of faith in her, came crashing down on him. He was the one who had been blind. Christina's presence in his house, her quiet dignity, her supposed revenge ploys saw it all in a new light. It wasn't about blackmail, it was about a desperate, wounded heart seeking justice, trying to make sense of betrayal that had derailed her life. His quest for wealth had been a fool's errand, a misguided attempt to heal a self-inflicted wound. The feeling that washed over him was not just regret, it was a profound, soul-crushing agony. He realized that in his pursuit of everything, he had ended up with nothing of value. The empire he had built felt like a prison of his own making. The path to his redemption was now clear, but it was a path that led to the wreckage of his own monumental mistakes. And it started with finding the woman whose life he had ruined twice. The truth had shattered Glenn's world, and the first casualty of the fallout was his engagement. The confrontation was not loud or dramatic, it was cold and surgical. He presented his now ex-fiancée with the evidence of her deception about the necklace, his voice devoid of all emotion. He didn't rage or yell. He simply looked at her, saw the pathetic, grasping ambition in her eyes, and felt nothing but profound, empty pity. He broke off the engagement on the spot, a swift and final severing of a tie built on lies. With the architect of his most recent mistake dealt with, a new, all-consuming obsession took hold. Find Christina. It wasn't just a desire, it was a primal need, a desperate urgency to undo the damage he had done. He launched an all-out, no expense-spared search, deploying the full, formidable resources of his billionaire empire for a purpose far more important than any corporate takeover. This wasn't about business, this was about his soul. He realized with a clarity that was both painful and liberating that she was the only thing of true value he had ever had. The money, the power, the accolades, they were all hollow trophies from a game he had been playing against himself. Christina, with her quiet strength and unwavering integrity, was the real prize, the one he had carelessly thrown away not once, but twice. His search was a frantic, desperate race against time. The search was a blur of private investigators, security footage analysis, and tracing financial records. He was a man possessed, driven by a singular, desperate hope. Every dead end, every missed opportunity, was a fresh wave of agony. He was terrified that he was too late, that she had vanished completely, taking with her his only chance at redemption. This desperate hunt was the most emotional journey of his life. This was a man unmade and being remade. The arrogant tycoon was gone, replaced by someone raw, humbled, and singularly focused. He was no longer the rich man in the rich man, poor woman story. He was just a man, stripped of his pride, desperately searching for the woman who held a missing piece of his own heart. The love story was far from over, was entering its most critical, high-stakes chapter. He pored over every piece of information, looking for clues, for any hint of where she might have gone. The desperation he felt was a new and humbling experience. For the first time in his life, there was something he wanted that money couldn't guarantee. He couldn't buy her forgiveness. He couldn't acquire her trust. He had to earn it, and that started with the simple, monumental task of finding her before she disappeared forever. The clock was ticking. He knew that with every passing hour, she was getting further away, her trail growing colder. This frantic, all-out search was more than just a hunt for a person. It was a pilgrimage of penance. Glenn Cunningham was finally fighting for something that mattered, a last-ditch effort to rewrite the ending of a story he had so terribly wronged, all in the name of a true love he had almost lost for good. The search yielded more than just Christina's location. It unearthed the full, ugly truth of the frame-up. Glenn's investigators didn't just find proof, they found a crystal-clear narrative of deceit. They uncovered security footage of his ex-fiancée entering the staff quarters alone, text messages where she boasted to her friend about getting rid of the obsessed maid, and a confession from the security guard she had manipulated. The evidence was not just definitive, it was damning. Seeing the calculated cruelty of the plot laid out in black and white was a sickening experience for Glenn. He finally understood the depth of the pain and humiliation he had heaped upon Christina. He hadn't just fired an innocent woman, he had validated the lies of a manipulative sociopath, becoming the weapon his ex-fiancée used to destroy her. He was complicit in a brutal act of psychological warfare against a woman he was now desperate to find. And in that moment of horrifying clarity, he finally saw her so-called revenge plot for what it truly was. It wasn't the scheme of a greedy blackmailer. It was a cry for justice. It was a desperate, last resort of a woman who had been wronged so profoundly that she felt she had no other recourse. Her desire for his ruin wasn't born of malice, but of a deep, agonizing need for him to finally see the truth and acknowledge the pain he had caused with his broken promise. This realization was a fundamental, life-changing shift. He stopped seeing himself as a victim of her scheme and started seeing himself as the cause of her pain. Her actions were a direct result of his. The entire drama had been a consequence of his initial betrayal and his subsequent blindness. The weight of his responsibility was immense, a crushing but necessary burden on the path to any possible redemption. He finally understood the emotional landscape Christina had been navigating. He pictured her, alone in his house, surrounded by the wealth he had built on the ashes of their dream, treated like dirt by the man who had promised her the world. Her desire for revenge was not just justified, it was, in its own wounded way, a testament to how much their love story had meant to her. You only fight that hard for something you once cared about that deeply. The knowledge of his ex-fiancée's treachery solidified his resolve, but also filled him with a new kind of fear. It wasn't just about finding Christina anymore. It was about facing her. How could he possibly ask for forgiveness when he'd been so easily manipulated, so quick to believe the worst of her? He knew he didn't deserve it. All he could hope for was a chance to finally, belatedly, give her the truth. Armed with his complete and devastating understanding, he felt a renewed urgency. He wasn't just chasing a ghost anymore. He was chasing a woman to whom he owed an apology that was years overdue. The definitive proof of the frame-up was not a weapon for him to use against his ex. It was a peace offering, a first, humble step in showing Christina that he finally, truly saw everything. And he was coming to find her. The tip came in at the 11th hour, a credit card transaction for a bus ticket. Glenn didn't wait for his driver, he ran. He drove like a man possessed, breaking every speed limit, his heart pounding in a frantic rhythm against his ribs. The bus station was a chaotic symphony of hurried goodbyes and rumbling engines. He scanned the crowd, his eyes darting from face to face, a knot of pure panic tightening in his stomach. Was he too late? And then he saw her. Christina was standing in line, suitcase in hand, just moments away from boarding the bus that would take her out of his life forever. She looked smaller, more fragile than he remembered, her face a mask of weary resignation. Seeing her on the verge of disappearing was like watching his last chance for redemption about to pull away from the curb. This was the final, desperate moment of their twisted destiny. He didn't shout her name. He simply moved, weaving through the crowd until he was standing directly in her path, blocking her way. She looked up, and her eyes widened in a shocking moment of disbelief. The last person on earth she expected to see was him, the billionaire who had shattered her, standing here in the gritty chaos of a bus terminal. The air crackled with a heavy, emotional silence, the noise of the station fading into a dull roar. He looked into her eyes, and for the first time, he didn't see a maid or a con artist. He saw the girl from the photograph, the woman he had wronged, the keeper of a broken promise. He humbly blocked her path, his posture not one of power, but of supplication. He didn't come with excuses or demands. He didn't ask for forgiveness, knew he had no right to it. He was there for one reason, and one reason only. "Don't go," he said, his voice raw, stripped of all its usual authority. "Please, just don't get on that bus. I'm not here to ask you to forgive me. I'm here because I finally know the truth, the whole truth, and I need to tell you everything. I'm begging you for a chance to finally tell you what really happened. All those years ago, and now, it was a plea, not a command. This was the ultimate plot twist in their tragic romance. The powerful rich man was now the one begging, and the defeated poor woman held all the power in her stunned silence. She could get on the bus and erase him from her life forever, or she could stay and listen to the words she had waited half a lifetime to hear. The choice was hers, a life-changing decision hanging in the balance. He stood there, vulnerable and exposed, his entire future hinging on her response. This wasn't about revenge or money anymore. It was about two souls, shattered by lies, standing at a final crossroads. It was about the faint but persistent hope that maybe, just maybe, true love was resilient enough to survive even the most devastating of wounds. He just needed her to give the truth one last chance. The press conference was meant to be a standard corporate fare, an announcement about a new acquisition. The room was packed with journalists and investors, cameras flashing, everyone expecting to hear Glenn Cunningham, the ruthless billionaire, talk about profits and projections. He walked up to the podium, looking out at the sea of expectant faces, and took a deep breath. He was about to go completely and spectacularly off script. "Thank you all for coming," he began, his voice steady and clear. "I have a prepared statement here about market growth, but I'm not going to read it." A murmur went through the crowd. "Instead, I need to talk about a debt. A debt that isn't on any balance sheet." He paused, letting the words hang in the air. "I'm here today to confess a catastrophic failure. Not of business, but of character." The room fell silent. This was a shocking surprise. He told them everything. He publicly confessed the entire story, starting with a promise made to a young woman when he was just a boy. He told the world how he had been deceived by a lie, how he let that lie turn him into a man he was never meant to be, and how his ambition was built on the foundation of that broken promise. He didn't spare himself, painting a brutal, honest portrait of his own moral bankruptcy. Then he exposed his ex-fiancee's deceit, presenting the undeniable proof that she had framed an innocent woman, Christina Meyer, for theft. He told the world how he had betrayed the most important person he had ever known, not just once as a scared boy, but a second time as an arrogant, blind man. He named her, Christina Meyer, not as a maid, but as the co-author of a dream he had abandoned. It was a public act of utter humiliation and accountability. This public confession was his ultimate act of self-immolation and the first true step towards redemption. He was systematically dismantling the myth of Glenn Cunningham, the invincible tycoon, in front of the entire world. He was making himself vulnerable, admitting his faults, and correcting a narrative that had been poisoned by lies for years. It was the most significant and emotional speech of his life. He was tearing down his own empire's reputation, and he didn't care. He knew that none of it mattered. The stocks could plummet, the investors could flee. His confession wasn't for them, it was for an audience of one, wherever she was. It was his desperate, public attempt to show her the sincerity of his regret, to prove that he was finally ready to face the truth, no matter the cost. This was the climax of their long and painful drama. As he spoke, he was no longer just a rich man. He was a man trying to undo a lifetime of mistakes, to reclaim a piece of his own soul. He ended the main part of his speech with her name, letting it echo in the stunned silence of the room. I betrayed a promise to the most important person I ever knew, Christina Meyer. The world now knew the truth. But the biggest gesture was yet to come. With the world's media broadcasting his every word, Glenn delivered his final, life-changing announcement. Effective today, he declared, his voice ringing with newfound purpose, I am liquidating a majority of my personal fortune. A collective gasp rippled through the press corps. The billionaire was willingly giving up his wealth. I am using these funds to create a foundation that will fully and permanently fund the community project we dreamed of as kids. This was it, his ultimate act of redemption. He wasn't just apologizing with words, he was making amends with action. He was finally fulfilling their broken promise, not as a token gesture, but as the new central mission of his life. He was trading his corporate empire for their shared dream, the one he had abandoned in his selfish pursuit of power. It was a shocking move that left everyone speechless, a plot twist no one saw coming. Then, looking directly into the main camera, as if it were a direct portal to her, he laid his soul bare. This empire, he said, his voice thick with emotion, all of it, is worthless without her. He publicly declared that all the success, all the money, meant absolutely nothing compared to what he had lost. In front of everyone, he dismantled the very identity he had spent years building, admitting his life was a hollow failure, without her in it. He wasn't a rich man anymore, he was just a man, humbled and broken, making one last, desperate plea. Christina, he said, her name a prayer on his lips. I know I don't deserve it, but I'm asking for a second chance. Not a second chance for me, but for us, for our promise. He was asking her to co-chair the foundation, to build their dream with him. Together, this was the climax of their epic love story. His public plea was the ultimate gesture of a changed man. He had sacrificed his pride, his reputation, and his fortune, all to prove that he had finally understood his mistake. He was offering her not just an apology, but a shared future, one built on the foundations of their original dream. It was a grand, romantic gesture, a testament to the enduring power of their true love. The world watched, captivated by this unbelievable drama. The story of the billionaire and the maid had transformed into a modern fairy tale of revenge, regret, and the hope for redemption. But the ending was not yet written. The power was no longer his. It rested entirely with a woman watching a screen somewhere, a woman who now had to make the most difficult decision of her life. Like this video as a sign of respect for his courage to admit his mistakes. His grand gesture was complete. He had done everything he possibly could to atone for his sins. Now, all he could do was wait and hope that his ultimate sacrifice was enough, that destiny would grant them one final chance to fulfill their true promise and find their way back to each other. What is an empire worth if it costs you your soul? The incredible journey of Glenn and Christina is a powerful reminder that our greatest mistakes don't have to be the end of our story. It shows us that true wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in the promises we keep and the courage it takes to fight for a second chance. If you also believe that kindness is a superpower and that it's never too late to make things right, then you found your place. This channel is more than just stories. It's a community for people who believe in the power of the human heart. Subscribe and join our family. Now for the trifecta like this video to spread the message that true redemption is possible. Comment below with your answer to this after everything. Do you believe Christina should give him that second chance? And finally, share this story with one person who needs to be reminded that our past doesn't have to define our future. And while you wait for what's next, know that our channel is a treasure chest of emotional stories just like this one. Explore our older videos and discover other unforgettable journeys that will touch your heart. To make sure you don't miss a single one of the incredible stories we have yet to tell, activate the notification bell. You won't want to be left out of the next emotional roller coaster we have coming your way.